ready? Yes. Hilda, can you please call the roll call?
Mayor Ambrosio Hernandez. Commissioner Lazar Guajardo.
Present.
Commissioner Bobby Carrillo.
Here.
Commissioner Ramiro Caballero.
Here.
Commissioner Daniel Chavez. Commissioner Ricardo Medina.
Present.
And Commissioner Flores. We have a quorum.
Thank you. All right. Do we need to excuse the?
Move to excuse absent members.
Second.
We have first and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, motion carries.
Thank you. Let's move on to item number 2, which is the budget presentation, the budget workshop. So what we're going to be listening to today is basically an overview of the city's budget. We're not going to hear from the directors. The directors will not be making a presentation the way they've done in the past. However, they are here to answer any questions should you have any questions. But Carla's going to do a high-level overview of the budget so you guys can get an idea where we stand today. Once she's done with that, we'll move into the water rate study. Raftelis, the consulting firm that we've used to do the water rate study, they'll be doing the presentation. When we're done with that, we'll talk a more in-depth discussion on the capital improvement projects that we have. And then after that, hopefully we'll go into executive session and be done by 10:30. Joking, yeah. We'll be done early today, hopefully. So, Carla, you want to kick it off?
10:30, Alex, you said?
Hopefully I'll be here soon. This will be very quick. Just want to go over, I guess, the main facts right now for this fiscal year. So let's start. Let's start with the good news about our fiscal capacity and fiscal impact of 18-19. So the good news is that we had a sales tax increase of 15% compared to last year. And we have managed to stay number 1 in the last 12 months consecutive in growth compared to our neighbor cities. So that's pretty good news. We had also a 3% increase in property taxes, which is not the best, but it's still a positive number. So we will always want to look at the good. Now, the bad things about this fiscal year. We've had a 30% decrease in municipal court fees, which translates to about $300,000 in just 1 year. There's a new Texas bill reducing cable and telephone franchise tax. This hasn't taken place yet. It got approved this fiscal year, but it will take effect in 1920. This is gonna take away about $550,000.
Okay.
Now, 3, we got a huge increase in health insurance claims, which in the general fund only translates to an additional $1 million. So adding those 3 up, we've had a negative impact in the general fund this fiscal year for $1.8 million. Now, I want to make the remark, and just to clarify, that what I'm going over right now is just the general fund only. We'll go into detail later into the other funds. Now, let's talk about our number 1 source of revenue, which is the property taxes. So the certified values for this tax year, we grew 6.3%, which is pretty good. Last year, we actually grew only 2.4%, which was one of the lowest that we've had in the last 6 years. So from 2.4% this year, we're growing 6.3%. We were at $2.9 billion in property values. Now, we're hitting it to 3.2.
Just so you all know, McAllen grew by 6.4, so we're in line with other cities.
Correct. Now,
Also, over here, we did about 4 years ago, we did the residential incentive program, we bought houses in. This growth is a direct result of those efforts out there. We brought in a lot of new residential growth, that's the biggest picture here. The goal at that time, we presented that ordinance to y'all to accomplish to get to $3 billion. Just real quick, so does this include the, like the property values that we have, because we got those new neighborhoods on the north side of town? it's a result of that.
Correct.
So that'll jump into next year's tax, because.
Tax roll.
Tax roll, because those.
Yes.
have
that
3.1
3.1
will go up, they're not all on there, there's still lots of. Yeah, there's a lot of need to be, that's what I'm saying, but still, so the numbers are going to increase on the property tax side.
Yes, and hopefully even higher than 6%.
Yeah.
So what does this mean? So this property tax value will generate for fiscal year 1920 a total of $19.6 million in property taxes. 17.1 to be used for the general fund and 2.5 for debt service. This is a 64.9% property tax rate, which is our current rate and has been for the last 2 years. Now, this is a general snapshot of the proposed budget for the general fund for 1920. We're proposing a total budget of $74.9 million, pretty much increasing at 6.4% overall. Again, the sales taxes and the property taxes are the ones that showing the most growth. Now, the expenditures, obviously, revenues most equal expenditure, so we're proposing a $74.9 million expenditure in the general fund, which again equivalates to a 6.4% increase compared to last year's budget. Now, where's the growth? Okay, well, here I'm going to show you the balanced budget, just to make sure what you want to see. Revenues equal expenses. Where's the growth? Personnel and benefits. The general fund pretty much would have an impact of 13 staff additions. Like I mentioned before, due to the health insurance claims increase, we have to be prepared and we have to be conservative. So we're projecting and proposing a 10% increase in health insurance costs compared to last year. So that adds up. We're also allocating $300,000 for the second phase of the compensation study, as we discussed in last year's budget workshop. We also have some capital outlay, which is about $2 million. And I'll go over first the personnel. So again, it will be an impact of 13 new positions. The capital outlay guys proposed, again, it's $2 million. Keep in mind that since we actually finance this $2 million over the life of the asset of whatever is being purchased, so it's over 5 or 7 years. So the true impact on an annual basis, it's about $378,000 for the general fund. So you see that we're purchasing $2 million, but we're actually going to spend $378,000 in a yearly basis. And that would be the debt payment. The utility fund, I guess I'm done with the general fund.
What are the 13 new employees? Which ones? I was trying to see, you're hiring mainly in the fire department? No, not the fire department.
Yeah, there's 3 in fire commands, those are 2 officers at the new fire station. So we're doing staffing back up, so we're gonna get 1 firefighter per shift. IT is getting one guy, HR is getting 1 person, communications, 2 supervisors, the shift for 24 hours. Development services is getting 1 kind of examiner, engineering and project.
Okay, so the plazas over here on the left side are the
So
ones
the
that...
one for the skyscraper is the one that.
The 300,000 that you mentioned on the compensation study,
Yes.
that's for pay increases? Is that what that is?
Right. Remember we initially talked
So
about.
that's gonna be allocated to
Yes.
salary increases?
300,000, and that includes benefits. I guess it's just an allocated lump sum amount that it's budgeted
Yeah.
for that.
Okay.
So, okay, the utility fund. I'm just gonna go very basic here because the budget for the utility fund is subject to the the water rate study. So as of right now, we still need to consider and water and 5.1 in sewer. Now, again, the budget is still subject to the water rate study, consideration from the city commission, and, planning to adopt it. The event center. The event center really has no significant changes, so I guess I'm just doing a quick snapshot there. Revenues from last year to this year are showing a little bit higher. It's pretty much due to the concession. What that means is that pretty much the general fund is gonna contribute a little bit less to the event center in order to break even. There's more concession revenue being generated. No changes in expenses, pretty much, everything the way it is, it's operating. No, there were no requests for staff or any additional items.
Excuse me, are we proposing more events, or what, how do we get that number that we're going to increase our sales in the concession?
Gary?
I mean, you're saying the revenues are gonna increase, how are we going to increase them? Or do we have, are you expecting more events, or where are we
Yes,
getting
Commissioner.
those increases from? Because it seems every year we've lost there in the golf course.
Well, we certainly have had more events. The challenge, Commissioner, is a lot of our events are sponsored by the city. However, even if an event is sponsored by the city, we have concessions open, selling more beer, more nachos. We've actually started using both of our bottoms-up machines, Commissioner. We're selling a lot more concessions. We're bringing in more in-house promoters who get a special rate with the event center, as long as they commit to bringing in 7 events per year. As of right now, we have 5 special in-house promoters. I guess the top dog, everybody knows, is Nano Ramirez. He really brings in the biggest shows with the biggest audience and the biggest spenders. So that's how we're projecting to raise more revenue for the city, and of course try to offset the investment that the taxpayers pay to run that, what I consider a quality of life venue here in the city.
So there's 35, so we're gonna have a minimum of 35 events a year.
Yes, sir. Yes, we had
Guaranteed.
86 last year. Yes, sir.
You should keep in mind though that most event centers throughout the state of Texas are loss leaders.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
They're more amenities to improve quality of life, but not necessarily intended to generate money. The one mission, just so you know, is losing about 400,000. I know the one that counts is losing upwards of 2 million. So it's one of these things that it's more of an amenity, more of a quality of life than so much intended to. I mean, ideally, we'd like for it to break even, but most of them throughout the state of Texas don't break even.
Yeah, I just wanted to, because I mean, you see the increase, so that's great that there is gonna be an increase. And if there are more shows, obviously, it's going, but I just wanna make sure we're gonna have those shows and all those events, because it will generate more money.
Correct. Now, Tierra del Sol. Also, no major significant changes. What I'm highlighting up there is, it would be a $77,000 increase contribution from the general fund compared to last year. And this is because, again, the expenses went up a little bit higher, and the revenues pretty much are not catching up the way they should be.
Are we including the renovation in that?
Okay, so that's lease proceeds? That's
Yeah.
good.
Right, so that's the amount that we're allocating for renovating the golf. So again, overall, for $1.49 million, we're proposing up to $1.453 million budget, so no significant change. Now, I'm gonna talk about, mention again also in a summary snapshot, the city of Pharr debt, the long-term debt, the amount that we owe. So as you can see right there, we had a total of $97 million outstanding as of today. And this includes everything. $44 million, or 46%, is for certificates of obligation or general obligation bonds, which means it's paid and backed out by property taxes. And then the remaining, which is the revenue debt, it's paid by pretty much the water utility fund or the bridge or other self-generating funds. And then the minority is just private loans, and then we have a CDBG 1085 loan that we're still paying. So just keep in mind that number, $97 million. Out of the $97 million, in the last 4 years, the city has issued $55 million. And this has been to improve infrastructure, parks, streets, public safety, including the communication building, and recreation. I guess it's a recreation because that includes the civic center. So now, the $97 million outstanding for fiscal year 2019 and 20, we're gonna issue another $19 million. And this $19 million is to complete the 3-year plan that we discussed last year in the budget workshop. That includes, again, all the projects, including the bridge expansion infrastructure. Now, so that you can have an idea of how much the city has to pay, how much we have to come up with every year. So with the $97 million and the $19 million that we're gonna issue, the debt service payment that we have to come up with is $7.5 million a year. So I did a breakdown of who pays what, or where that money comes from. So 2.5 from property taxes, and that's where the levy of the collections go. $2.5 million go towards that. $2.1 million is what's contributed from the bridge. $1 million from PDC, even the paving fees contributes to that. The budget actually from paving fees, everything pretty much goes towards the debt, and this is because of the 4-year repaving program that we did. Hotel taxes, about $300,000. And then reserves and others, which is the minimum. But again, $7.5 million is what we have to pretty much come up with a target and say, and all of this is fully budgeted and funded.
Is there gonna be any impact with the bridge stuff, what's going on right now?
We'll refer about that in a second.
Now, talking about debt, this is just a quick summary of the projects, and we're gonna talk about it more in detail. This is a list of the unfunded projects that I guess they're priority right now. So it's a total of $15.9 million of projects that I guess the city has in mind, and then we have to come up with the funding.
Yeah, Commissioner, so what we had done, we need some north-south connectors to come in. This is express road interchange, this is the property PVC block. Where you, concentrate not, that's the road actually will come on this side. For example, the Tanner Street, you get the 495 for the express road. Especially when the express road is gonna be under construction.
And we've got all the easements and everything, the property's already ours?
We have this property's gonna come from TxDOT. This property right here was the one that went to commission last meeting to do a counter offer, to buy that property. He hasn't been amenable, we might have to condemn it, but that's the last property. Yeah, 5-year repayment program, we're estimating 4 years, but it looks like it's really a 5th year. We need one to do something that. Raiders Drive, Sioux Road, Rolana, we're gonna unpick it out there, and pump over, make the collector, so we'll have a road from all the way from Owasso to Sioux Road. We don't have any problem.
And all that property's already been,
Yeah, that's all the irrigation, okay. North Cypress, this is on the other side of the expressway, Community 1. All this right away is here, the only part, I think we need a small sliver here. Most of it's already flooded.
That's the one that goes directly to north, right? That road?
The other one, that was
The other one.
Raiders Drive. That was all the way. This is, South Sugar Road. As y'all know, we did this first part in-house. The rest is gonna be, the last part will come with a traffic light here to get the properties, the Torrance Park properties out, they're having a hard time making a left-hand turn. We'll go to the traffic light.
But that's just a wish dream, because we're not gonna get that property.
Well, we condemn, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when and how much it's gonna cost.
How long will it take us to condemn it and to take over?
Well, we're gonna do the engineering this year, we're gonna talk to Mr. Hernandez. We have another, at last city commission, there was buying easement out here for the water line. So he already knows we're gonna do that, we're gonna talk to them about putting the road out and see where they wanna go. The road might be, the way it shows here, skewed off, instead of right in line with Torrance Park Drive. We can allow up to 120 foot off center from the.
Because the cost would just be 1.2 million to do it, but what's the cost gonna be for us to buy the property?
That is including the property.
That's including the property?
We're at, allocate $500 million to buy the property. 700,000.
Do we have the right to condemn that property? Okay.
It's a public use, it's a road.
Okay.
Because right where we wanna do the road, isn't that where all his pumps and his, there's a lot of his, property there?
Well, that's where the little store is and all that. That's why we're looking at offset and send it to the west.
Of the,
The west of the intersection. Usually it wouldn't be fine, but we're offset.
How come we don't go like, make like a little left turn right there, right there? Yeah.
We can, but it's gonna be more expensive and they're gonna have to work on the engineering to get these lights. It's too offsetted. We usually allow, like, set up to 120 feet either way. Then a truck will have to work, that's way forward. I mean, anything's possible, it's gonna take a lot of time.
We did meet with Mr. Hernandez, and I guess we're trying to, the only impact would be that Casa de Cambio he has. We try to line it up. He doesn't have a problem with it. You know, that's gotta go. He's looking to expand his gas station to the east. So, you know, we're trying to line it up for that little Casa de Cambio that he has.
yeah, no, cause I've been talking to him for the past 10 years about giving, to try to do something with it, because I mean, I told him all it's gonna do is increase his property value.
Yeah, he's gonna have two hard corners now. It's gonna, it's great.
Okay.
Okay, so overall, I guess I told you guys that it was gonna be quick. This is just a summary of pretty much the city-wide budget. At the beginning, I was mainly talking about the general fund, but this is, I wanted to show you this so that you can have an idea, operational-wise, excluding capital projects, how much it takes to run the city of Pharr. So, again, the total proposed budget citywide, excluding capital projects, is $109.3 million. The $55.9 million that you see in the general fund, that's without the $19 million that we're including for the capital projects that we discussed last year. So the $55 million is just purely operations.
Totally over 200 million, all.
Correct, including capital projects and everything, we're talking about that we're running a show of higher than $200 million.
No más.
Yeah.
Good shit.
And we're trying to be very fiscally responsible. Okay, so just to close, important facts about this presentation, and for you to keep in mind, the city of Pharr's debt capacity right now is maximized. So that's something that I guess I wanna make sure that, you know, it's understood and it's clear. Health insurance, these things are highly volatile right now. So obviously that it's in a rough position because we gotta be conservative in how to budget, because we're talking about an increase from $500,000 to $1 million that we do not do. And we need to be ready with the money. So we need to set it aside. The collective bargaining is not accounted in this proposed budget scenario, so I wanted to make that clarification to you. The current board situation makes the bridge revenues unpredictable and unreliable. Right now, we haven't felt or we haven't seen the numbers being affected, but again, we gotta be ready and we just never know. So that's something that we need to keep in mind also. Now, despite the negative factors mentioned mentioned about the decrease in court fees and an increase in health insurance and the $500,000 that we're gonna lose in franchise fees from cable and telephone, we're still able to propose a balanced budget. So that's, I guess that's the good news. And the last thing, which is right now the next presentation, is that the water rate study is still pending for consideration. So that's something that we need to, pay attention and take action on. And
Are we working on that debt capacity? You can always issue more debt if we raise taxes, right?
correct.
So-
I'm saying assuming everything as of right now.
Now, y'all need to keep in mind that there was a bill that was passed in legislative session, Senate Bill 2. And Senate Bill 2 puts a cap on the rollback tax to 3.5%. So a lot of cities right now are taking advantage that next year they're going to be able to raise taxes more than 3.5% of the rollback. So McCown is proposing, I think, an 8%, and the same thing with Mission. Because next year, if they want to raise more than 3.5%, it's got to go to voters. Whereas before, you could raise it up to the voter. So you're going to start seeing a lot of cities. I know Austin's doing the same thing. A lot of the major cities are taking advantage of that now. Next fiscal, that opportunity.
So I guess if the city wants to raise property taxes, now is the time.
So when we go over the capital project, that's what we're looking to fund it, so we have those slides to how much each penny will bring in.
So I guess that concludes the first part of my presentation. I'll go back in the safety section, interview session, so thank you very much.
Any questions?
Anybody have any questions, commissioners? Now we got Raftelis, or let's take a quick break.
Yeah, so they can get set up the next one.
I have no idea.
Okay. Hi, I'm Angie Flores. I'm with Raftelis. We have been working with the city to do a water and wastewater rate study. We started this process back in April, and we had a kickoff meeting with Carla and some of your commissioners to really get an understanding of what the city was looking for in the rate study. And so as part of that, we did what we call a pricing objectives workshop. And what we do there is we identify, various objectives that you can accomplish by setting rates at a certain level or by doing different pricing. And one of the things that came out was that really the main objective for you guys was rate stability and revenue stability. So that's basically, keeping rates, from having big swings that'll allow your revenue to kind of stay stable. So, one of the things that makes revenue go up and down a lot would be if you have a big inclining block rate where a lot of your revenue is based on high usage. Your current rates don't do that, so your revenue tends to stay pretty stable. So in considering rates for you guys, we're kind of keeping them the same as with your rate structure where it is now. One of the things that we discovered as we were looking through your consumption data was that there was some commercial accounts that were being charged the residential rate. So one of the things that we did in the study was move those accounts, and I'll kind of go over how many accounts that is here in a minute. In June, we came back and we provided Carla with some initial results of the rate study, and since then we've been working to just refine, really mostly refining the capital plan, making sure that it lines up with what is really being considered in your 5-year capital plan. So as far as the accounts that we moved, it's about 300 accounts. They are made up of churches, some housing complexes, stadiums and schools. In order to make this move formal, the rate ordinance will need to be changed so that those nonprofits are charged the commercial rate. This will generate about $50,000 of additional revenue for the city based on existing rates. So it's a positive to make this move. I'll talk a little bit about, again, I can show you if you're interested kind of what the impact is to those particular accounts. But they will need to be notified, obviously, that this change is happening. So one of the first steps in doing the rate study is to look at where are you currently. And again, we're looking at a 5-year period. And so we take your existing rates and we calculate what the revenue is going to look like for that 5-year period. And we develop also a revenue requirement that's based on your expenses and your debt service. And again, we consider that 5-year capital plan. For the rate study, and your expenses are pretty much staying the same. You can see that in this graph, the dark blue line represents your total O&M. So while those are increasing slightly, it's really more just an increase in salaries, increase in insurance costs, but for the most part, everything's getting inflated at about 3%. Your bigger revenue requirement is debt service related to your capital plan. So we are assuming in the rate study a big issue in 2020 of $35 million. That's something that y'all have already submitted to the Water Development Board. It's on the intended use plan. The Water Development Board has indicated that you would be eligible for about $4 million in loan forgiveness in relation to that bond issue. It would be a 30-year term, and we're assuming in the model a 2% interest rate. That's really, it's conservative. Right now, the interest rate for the drinking water and clean water SRF loans is at about 0.5%. So it's a really good program, but we wanted to be conservative on the debt service. In addition, we've included, again, in the following 4 years, I think in total of the 5 years, we're looking at about a $70 million capital program. So all the future bond issues, we're assuming at 20 years and 4%, assuming that you would go to the market for those loans. And all of this includes about a 1% bond issuance cost. The important thing to notice here in this graph is that based on your existing rates, if you do nothing to your rates, you are not going to be able to cover your costs. So you can see that shortfall there starting in 2020, going all the way to 2024. So that's an important point to remember as I continue on the presentation. So again, this is just kind of a different view of that same graph. So you can see here that your deficit starts in 2020. Well, really, we're projecting a slight deficit in 2019, but then 2020, that deficit gets larger. Now in 2020, you have a sufficient fund balance to cover that shortfall. But going forward, you really start to erode that fund balance. And you start to erode your debt service coverage, so that falls below 1 times. Your debt service coverage is what's required in your bond covenants, and your current bond covenant is a debt service target of 1.25 of your average annual debt service, or 1.1 of maximum debt service, whichever is greater. So right now, the target is 1.25. So you can see that this would really start to erode. So if those capital projects that would be needed in those years, it would be pretty difficult to go to the market to get funding if you're not meeting that service target. So what are the recommended rate increases? We are recommending, and we presented some options to the city. We decided to just do rate increases kind of across the board. We're considering your utility as a combined utility. So We are proposing an 18% rate increase in 2020, followed by a 10% in 21, 12% in 22, and 6% in 23, and 4% in 2024. When you get out to that 2024, then you kind of start just keeping up with inflation. Yes.
Can you go back one slide, please?
I know that on the rate increase 80%, they don't know what's the dollar amount. So they have.
Yes, I'm going to go into that.
What is the assumption on the revenues that is gonna be the same for all those years?
That's just existing rate. That's just based on existing rate and no growth. That's just kind of worst case scenario, if you will.
So we don't have any, in the past 4 or 5 years, the revenue has been the same or it's been increasing?
No, it's been increasing. Again, this is just worst case scenario that if you were, because we have very minimal growth in your financial plan. So this assumes no growth and your rates stay the same,
Just for being conservative.
just to be conservative.
Okay.
I don't want to be conservative.
So under these proposed rates, you can see that the financial plan is a lot better. We're able to meet your debt service coverage target. You're above the 1.25. You're generating a surplus in your current revenue and actually contributing to your fund balance. So this really puts you in a better position. This shows graphically how you're meeting that debt service coverage, as well as meeting your operating reserve and actually generating some cash. What this does is allows you to maybe cash fund some of that future capital, or other, to try to cover some other capital needs. So what are the bill impacts using these rate increases? Currently, your average bill for a residential customer using 6,000 gallons is about $46. With the proposed increases, the increase would go to about $55 in 2020, up to $74 out in 2024. The commercial bill, and what we're showing here is a 1-inch meter using about 32,000 gallons. The bill is currently at about $143. That would go to $169 and up to $227 in 2024. And here's how the rates actually change. Your current base rate is $16.01, and your volumetric rate is $9.90. The proposed bill, the base rate would go to $18.89, and the volumetric rate would go to $11.70. The same for wastewater. The base rate would go from $14.55 to $17.17. The volumetric rate would go to from $5.88 to $6.94. So the total combined bill, and again, this is based on a 6,000 gallon user, would increase about $8 from the $46.30 to the $54.70.
So, real quick, Wiley, or Mr. Viescas, whoever would know this.
Yes.
Our base rate is 6,000 gallons that we give per customer, right?
That's correct.
If we would take that to 4,000 gallons, how many people are actually using over 6,000 gallons of water?
I would say at least 50% of those.
50%? So we would lower our gallon rate
Put it on a scale.
and put it to increase, or you start charging the people their water usage, we won't have to increase our percentage rate that high. It will still go up, but that direct increase won't go to the every single consumer, right?
It will go to every single consumer because your gallons are going down, well, I guess 50% of them. But
Right.
It depends what that match, if the other 50% are below 3,000, then the 50% market.
They're gonna stay, right, because they'll stay more in line. But, people that are using more water, well, yeah, but they're paying for what they're getting.
Yeah,
So that's something we could look at, because at the same time, we're not gonna hammer that person who's using less water. I mean, because if you're using 6,000 gallons, well, great, you're at least paying for what you're getting. But if we're gonna increase somebody that's using 3,000 gallons a year, a month. And we're gonna hit them with the same cost that other people are using more water. So should we look at maybe lowering our base, the amount of gallons?
How much you give in the base rate?
Right, for the base rate, that way you're not hitting, you're only hitting the people that are using the water.
Right.
So what we're doing is actually charging the consumer for what they're using, and don't charge the people that aren't using. You don't hurt them as much. Kinda know what I'm saying?
Oh, I perfectly understand. I'm just trying to think, so.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's still gonna take.
And we can run those numbers. That's kind of the art of rate design. That's kind of what we talked about when we were doing the pricing objectives, that you can take your current rate design and make modifications to it to generate the same amount of revenue, but to affect your customers in the ways that you want to, whether it's to give them a break or to get them to start paying for the actual water they're using, whatever it is.
And I think that's more what it is. I mean, let's charge people for what they're using, and don't hurt the people that aren't using it. That's just an idea. I mean, I'm just throwing that
Yeah,
out there.
that's definitely something we can run.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was something to look at, because, I mean, if somebody's not using if they're using 3,000 gallons, and you got somebody using 6 every month, I mean, people aren't even getting what they're paying for right now.
On your proposal, did you only do that one with 18 on all those numbers, or did you project another set of numbers?
The 18% we applied to the
I
rate
underst-
structure across the
I
board.
understand, but did you just do that sort of scenario, or did you do another one?
We did 3 different scenarios that we provided to the city. One of the things that we actually did was what we call cost of service, where we allocate the cost to your customer classes based on what they use, or based on how they affect your system. What that showed was that your wastewater system is under recovering, and so the rate increases to your wastewater system were going to be higher than what we were projecting on the water side. And so there was going to be a little bit of an adjustment to try to bring that wastewater system up to where it needed to be. That was one scenario, was what do you do to get there? The other scenario was, it was also cost of service, but it was bringing the wastewater up slowly. So it wasn't full cost of service, but it was bringing the wastewater up slowly. And in the meantime, the water system would subsidize the rates to keep your combined utility whole. So those were the 3 scenarios that we presented. In the end, we decided, let's just
To answer your question, Commissioner, no, I think what we're looking for is, when we do one at 14%, one at 12%, one at 18 is what we needed to get to the debt service.
Right, the 18%, this scenario, in all the scenarios, we were trying to make sure that your utility is covering those costs in all the scenarios. And I believe that the Water Development Board, for their funding, is going to want either a plan that shows that you're going to get to full cost of service or full cost recovery, or, probably, having it now,
Yeah, we're gonna have to show that we're meeting our commitments.
that you're meeting your debt service coverage.
Sure, you can pay for it.
So,
And also, if we're gonna expand it to ETJ, and we're gonna try to take over that service area, we need to be able to show.
say, so this 35 million bond issue for 2020 is to expand the plant?
No, 35 million is from water development, it's not a bond issue. 19 million.
Okay, so all of this money, then all of this money is for, to expand the plants?
Water development, borrow.
But what are we gonna do with it?
The bond is to help pay for all the new infrastructure that we want to put in for the drainage and all the new water lines and the.
Well, there's 2 different things, there's the
So are
last
we
part of the
increasing, we're not
agreement.
increasing capacity on the water plant and the sewer plant?
Yes, we are. The changes, the proposal we're doing is gonna make it more efficient, which will increase capacity. But it won't increase tank size or that, it'll give us additional capacity.
So the additional capacity, once we connect more users to the system, is gonna create more revenue. That's why I don't like this model that you're using with a fixed revenue.
No,
because
over
it's
here-
It's really creating a,
Over here, we do have some growth built in along with the rate increases.
But
So you can
that-
see the rate, the revenue increasing.
But that's more of a slow increase in that. But with the initial hit, we start putting it in the ground. We gotta put it in the ground before we're gonna recover that money.
Right.
So we don't have that money to put.
but
don't have
right
the
now,
money
we
to
still
put
have
in.
added capacity and we're growing, so.
Self-capacity, but it's based on numbers. It's based on TCQ, connection requirements, each connection has to get so much numbers. That's how we get our capacity, and we negotiated that down to get initial capacity on numbers.
Yeah.
But still, the bigger hit that we're gonna take that is, so the city is 23.5 miles, square miles, right? We're over 15,000 acres. The ETJ is 15,000 acres by itself. If we were to take a big chunk of that, 5,000 acres, there's
Yeah,
no
yeah, we
way,
know.
without improvements to the plan. At today's standard, there's no way we're gonna do that. We have to plan to.
These are the projected increases in revenue.
Yes, with the rate increases and the growth that we have in the model.
So within your percentage of increases that you have projected, you have already also projected the revenue increases up to 2024.
Right, this has the rate increase assumed in the revenue calculation along with an increase in connections.
Okay, because it's kind of misleading, because in the previous one, you're saying that it's flat, so that 14 million is flat.
Well, because
And then this one,
The previous one didn't have any rate increase.
It didn't have any rate
that's
increases.
what I'm saying.
Rate of revenue growth.
I think the confusion was that on your projections, you were keeping the one flat. And here, you're reflecting an increase, which is okay. I mean, it's obvious that you had, but I don't want to, it seemed to me that you had just left the 14 million across the board and just increased it throughout 2024.
But, okay, so maybe there's confusion, so we could have done the other one that's 14 million and done a 3% growth, but it still wouldn't have covered. This is,
No, I
this is not
understand.
growth, this is just increasing.
This is
revenue.
primarily, I don't think we have a, I don't even think we have a 3% growth in the,
Oh, I'm saying that was-
in connections, but, right.
Yeah, just want to make sure that you have in your projections that you have included an increase in revenues, because there is going to be increase in revenue.
Right,
That you don't, I don't want to be conservative in that number and then increase the percentages significantly because you're being conservative on the revenues. That both of them are being considered at the same time, so that it's consistent. That
well,
you don't.
we always recommend that to our clients that they be conservative.
I understand.
So in order to, because if not, then you can go in debt.
But we
I
don't want,
understand that.
but I don't think we're being overly conservative.
Well, that's what it seems to me. If at the beginning you're telling me that you're keeping that 14 million constant.
Right.
But that's
Well,
what you said.
but you're certainly not gonna make, even if I were to include the growth, the revenue you're getting from the one, the 100 additional customers that you're getting, you're not gonna make up the $2 million that you need.
No, I understand that, but I want you to include them
Okay,
in your projections.
we can do that.
Even if it's a 0.5%, it doesn't matter. The thing is, at least we're not overcharging the patients, the customers at that time.
Right,
Even
and we're,
if it's-
like I
even
said,
if
we're
0.5%,
taking
to
that
me
into
it's better.
consideration when we're calculating the rates. We are taking the growth into consideration.
Okay.
So it is based on those future connections.
Okay.
So kind of same thing here on the commercial. We're projecting about a $26 increase by going from the 143 to the 169. Again, we're just increasing everything across the board at that 18%. So if we want to consider some rate design changes, we can certainly do that and come back with some scenarios. So this is a larger commercial user. It's about 100,000. It's at 100,000 gallons. You can see that their rate increase at 100,000 gallons is about $76 for a larger commercial customer. So where are you in comparison to your neighboring cities? You can see Pharr is kind of fourth in line after Mission on your existing rates. With the proposed increase, you would move up a couple of steps beyond Brownsville and Alamo. I do want to point out that Alamo is currently changing their rates, and they're proposing a much larger jump. They're going from $55 to $73 in 2020. So you can see how they're
All
moving.
these are based on everybody using is that everybody's basic base rate, 6,000 gallons?
6,000 gallons.
So everybody basically has that base rate.
Well, no, this
Oh, put
assumes
in the
that a
lower plate.
user of 6,000 gallons. So I take whatever their rate structure is and I calculate what their rate is at 6,000 gallons.
And my gallon's going up too, so
Yeah, I don't have that in here.
my gallon's going up.
So for commercial, Pharr, again, you're third in line after Edinburgh. And then your proposed would move you beyond Mission. And again, you can see Alamo's raising their commercial from 170 to 188. So you're still going to be at the kind of at the lower level compared to your neighboring cities. You can see Weslaco commercial, Brownsville, and San Benito. Their commercial rates are pretty high for a 32,000 gallon user. The other thing was that Alamo has at 25,000 gallons on commercial, they have pretty substantial, it looks like almost like a surcharge. We didn't include it here because we weren't really sure what it was for. But it would have put them at that higher level if we had included it. I'm not really sure what it's about.
Well, that's the only way they get any type of revenue, because they don't have any major commercials, they don't have any retail, they don't have anything, so that's the only way they can do to sustain their city.
Yeah.
Through their charging people.
So that concludes my presentation. You know, the next steps would be for the council to consider the rates. We can certainly make any refinements. I can definitely provide that cash flow, including the growth at the existing rate, so you can kind of see what that impact is. So really from here, we just need to make any refinements that you would like us to make. And then the final thing is that we're going to give the model that we've created to Carla so that she has that tool available to her, and we'll provide some training as well so that the model can be updated.
The 6,000, maybe I'm just stuck on that 6,000 gallons that we're using. Are all the cities at that base rate, or what is the average most cities charge for their base? Or what's their base? Like McAllen, how many gallons do they give?
I don't have that in front of me, but a lot of cities.
That way we can do, like Edinburgh, McAllen, and Mission, because those are the ones that are gonna be more compatible to us. So if they're at 4,000 gallons or 5,000 gallons, then they're creating quite a bit of income on the difference of the water usage that people are using.
Yeah, I'd be careful not to try to set your rate design based on what your neighboring cities are doing, but I can tell you that the move is really to move away from including gallons in your base rate so that you charge everybody for what they use. And so sometimes those gallons that you include in the base rate, people consider them as, oh, that's the amount of water that I can just use no matter what. So that's kind of the trend, is some utilities are moving away from including gallons in the base rate. But, again, it's up to the city, it's up to what your objectives are in developing that rate structure.
But when people don't use that as much water, they'll hit the still base rate, and we don't have to purchase as much water, because people
Right.
are using water just to use it.
So we chose the 6,000 gallons because that's really where your average usage is on your residential side. That's about what everybody uses, is that 6,000 gallons. So that's why we chose, most of your customers are going to use about that much water. Obviously, some people use a lot more and some people don't use near the 6,000, but that's kind of where most of your customers use water. So that's why we chose that 6,000. But we can certainly bring you, we can look at those rate structures for all the other cities and,
I mean, I'd just be curious because, I mean, at the end of the day, we have to look at our constituents, the people we're serving, and I don't feel we should charge people for what they're not using. But if we bring it down, then the people that aren't using it, then they won't get it hurt as much. But the people that do use it, and, you know, they want better things or whatever, they want their grass greener, they want this, well, then you know what? At the end of the day, we also won't be going into having to go purchase more water that we end up seem to have every year. So when we're conservative, people will be more conservative. They're gonna say, well, you know, I gotta be more careful on how I use my water. You know, you're gonna be looking at that faucet if it's leaking or that toilet that's leaking water, because you know what? Some people are gonna have to budget on that. And at the same time, it doesn't cost the city. I mean, it's at the full picture, if we don't have to buy an extra million acres of water, well, then that money we don't have to pull out of our utility fund, so that's extra money that we have, right?
right.
I mean, I'm just looking at it at a big picture.
Well, definitely let us take a look at it. We can come up with some different rate structures that'll generate the revenue that you need and have the least impact to your lower water users. So, yeah, let us look at that. Any other questions? No? Uh-huh.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what we're doing.
We're gonna go to capital, we're gonna just start discussing the capital improvements. Since we just took a break, we're gonna move through, right? We'll get them put up the slide, the capital improvements slide.
They already took it out of them.
Oh, the water service.
That's what needs to be. That's what she was talking about. Then there was an additional charge for. Right, it's a tier structure, so the next 4,000, I'm not sure what the tier is. So I say that.
We'll do it.
The building department. Okay, so you said it's $2,000, 3,000 gallons more. Okay, so you give them, let's say $40. No, the tourist fees are right now. That's the additional. So if you want to do here, say you want to go with all change from zero, I mean, 4,000. Okay, now from 4,001 to 6,000, that's another $1. Sure, if I'm mistaken, everybody pays. In other cities, they have a no, we don't. No. Not that we don't. That's what sometimes in other cities, you want to get away from huge yard.
So you guys have some misconception. Well, I'm not doing that. It's irrelevant. 3,000 or 6,000. Then we pay this utility X amount of $1 million. We buy the water. So the only way we can stop this is budget water.
Exactly, so but if people are starting to say, hey, I can use 6,000 gallons anyway.
Well, there's some incentive for them, like you said, to not use water because I'm gonna get my bill for $6,000.
At the big picture, we have to purchase this.
It's how some, and now my parents' house, nobody left there. I guess I paid $90 a month. And Monty said, oh, there has to be a link. There is no link.
You just have to use it.
They had to hire. And then the supermarket.
If you flush one time, you flush 20. Everybody go, that's also water.
Yeah, well, again,
Because there's no difference. The main water here comes to differentiate whether you're drinking it or what.
I'll flush it.
I'll add to that because
There's one going out because we have a tank.
so let's suppose you have a yard. Now you're paying more for it because you're using water.
That's what it is. The county has that tier, you know? Through insurance, they have a insurance yard, they pay 3,000.
My 4 years last longer than
This morning I got over on the other like
Puro artificial turf, pura piedra.
We need to keep, wherever it falls, that's how we're gonna get our customers to come in. We can always use that. You know what, you're gonna pay this amount of water.
In the back of my house, there's a maintenance. Backyard is
Well, 10 feet from where I installed another floor. There's like,
I think we should charge for numbers, not someone who's been in the trees already covered in the base. Get a sheet of paper down. And then when people say, hey, why my water bill? Because we're charging for what you're using. I think it's easy for someone to understand that. They say, no, we should raise the rate.
This section has always been like about hours.
When I say that people are doing this, they don't even need to, but they're going to use a lot of money. Because we call it the banana. We don't have to purchase it, so we save. Backpacking, we save money by not purchasing it.
So they're just interested in making sure that we keep our rates so we have to pay them.
In order to
Has nothing to do with city revenues as well.
That's the pain, the debt that we want to incur. by doing everything we want.
The drainage comes from the general fund. It's not that big.
Already, guys?
Water and sewer. So that's what we're gonna cover that for the new water lines, the new sewer lines that's on. The drainage is gonna come on that bond issue that we want to try to figure. That's where all that's coming from, right?
So just a little bit more on CIP, these are the list of projects that us as staff think that we need. Since we went over the North Canada project, MPO, the engineering, these are for MPO projects that are currently, within the 5-year window?
4-year tip.
4-year tip. This is only engineering for those projects. MPO should pick up the rest of the construction.
And those excuse me real quick, those FPO projects are to be shovel ready, so once that money comes out, right?
That's why we're doing the engineering.
That way people can know.
Plans, specs, engineering, environmental, all that. 5th-year repaving, $2.5 million, that should finish off just about everything. North Knights Drive, so North Canada and North Knights are a 3-lane facility, one coming, one going, one center turn lane. They're not 5, 6 lanes like we were looking at before. Being a little bit more conservative, just moving traffic. South Sugar Road is gonna be the same mirror that we have there, concrete, it is industrial. And that does include right away in that figure. Northside Library, y'all expressed an interest about 2 years ago to mirror the DRC on the north side of town. So we have one south, one central, one north. We are negotiating to secure some land for that property. And I believe there's some state funding coming out for that one also. In total, we need about $16 million. Like we said, these are all unfunded projects. So this is the scenarios that if y'all want to fund them, that we have. We go up 1 penny, we can issue debt of 4.2. We go up 2 pennies, 8.5. 3 pennies, 4 pennies. Yeah, 13 million. And then at the rollback rate of 71 cents, we can issue $28 million of debt. So if you want to fully fund everything, maybe we'll be between 68 and 71 cents.
So that's at 5 cents?
That's at 64, so 70.
70, for the $28 million debt, we would have to go up 6 cents?
Almost 7 cents.
7 cents.
0.68 cents.
So that would be $70 per every $100,000, right? $70 for every 100?
70 additional dollars. 70
70 additional for every 100,000, because that's what people need to know,
Correct.
because what we're telling right there, people are probably lost and not, so for every $100,000 your home is worth, you're gonna get a $70
Correct.
annual increase.
That is correct.
Yeah, that's what we need to let our constituents know.
In simple terms, yes.
Right, in simple terms, right.
But remember, so also the appraisal district increased values countywide. So aside from that increase, people are saying, that is not us, that is the
No,
value.
yeah, that's all, I mean, as of right now, when people say, ¿por qué me estás subiendo? We're not. It's the county, the appraisal. So that's how we tell people now. This is for people to understand that we want to raise the taxes in order to do all these things that need to be done to update our city, really, to get our city to where we need to be. And obviously, once we do Sugar Road, once we do all those other things, that's just gonna increase more commercialism, because that road makes hard corners when the people start developing, so there are gonna be more warehouses off of Sugar Road, because I know the Atlantices are going to not just leave the road there and go across, they're gonna start developing that property. So the next 4 or 5 years, we will see property taxes go up. I mean, it's gonna be a win-win for everybody. The Cypress, that street, it's not gonna stay just a street, there's properties along the way there, right? So that becomes more applicable for people to come in to wanna do commercial properties there, stuff like that. Because that will be more of a commercial zone, won't it?
Yeah, we'll have to express one.
Right around it. I mean, we're gonna have our, there in the corner where we just got the property from,
Holiday Village,
Yeah.
that hospital, medical, what's it called? Surgery, medical.
So obviously, we're gonna have all types of businesses wanting to open up down that road. So all that's gonna create retail, property, the whole 9 yards. I mean, tell just people know that we're just not doing it to do it, because people say, no, ¿pa' qué van a poner esas calles? No se necesita. Or they, so people can understand, yes, we do need them, and that's how we need to let the people know. I mean, we need to, our marketing people need to put that on paper. So when we can send it out, so to the people, our constituents know that, why are we doing this? We're doing this.
I mean, all these things add value.
Big time value.
We're
It's
not
value.
sure quality of
A lot of value. But if we don't let people know that, all they see is, no nomás me están subiendo las taxes.
Do you have to raise taxes on any road? Can't you do taxes based on value of their properties? I mean, you have to raise, is it mandatory you have to raise on everybody?
Yeah, it's across the board. Yeah.
So
Well, what we
somebody-
do is
Somebody who has
freeze.
a $50,000 home, you raise their taxes. You know, and somebody has a $500,000 home, you raise their taxes. You can't do a graduated,
No.
No.
why? What is,
Because the,
is it
yeah,
a state law?
This is state law.
yeah,
Yes,
the
that's
way
how-
the way it'll be unfair taxation. You can't tax one less than the other.
Why?
Unless they're 65, no?
State law, Constitution, you
No,
can't,
I'm
unfair
saying,
taxation, you have to.
I know it's a state law, but I'm just saying, why is it unfair?
Oh,
I mean, I'm just saying.
lawmaker's attorneys, that's her. It's against the Constitution. I mean, it's unfair taxation. You can't, you have to tax everybody the same.
And,
But the Democrats.
it just, to me, you raise taxes and somebody has, a a home, can't afford the raising taxes.
Look at,
You know, versus somebody who does, have $500,000 home can afford the taxes. You know, just doesn't.
But it's all a proportional tax. I mean, it's not a flat tax to everybody. It's not 70 to this guy that's got a $50,000 home and 70 that's got a $500,000 home. It's a proportional tax.
Based on the value
It's
of.
the same rate.
It's the value of the home.
yeah, it's
$50,000
a fair,
home would be
it's a fair rate.
$35 a year.
Sounded like Guajardo now, but,
I know you,
No offense, Commissioner.
don't even say what you were telling me right now.
no, but I don't know.
Like I said,
But we'll get those answers. We'll
We'll be
pursue.
discussing all that.
like I said,
Yes, sir.
yet on this debt service, you proposed a $10 million library, right, on your thing. If we reduce that, then we would only have to go up, up to 6, if you delete the 10 million in the bond, then you can go 13 and you can handle everything, right?
South Pharr was only 4 million.
So why
Why
do
is
we
it
wanna,
10?
why do we wanna build a new library right now when?
No, but we're getting some state funding, right?
Yeah, hopefully we're gonna get $5 million state funds for construction.
So we need,
So we only need 5. We only need 10 million.
And well,
So then we can stay within the 13
well,
million debt service.
yes, sir, but the concept was, and like I said, this was a 2-year-old project. The concept was to mirror what we had over there. So that $10 million came from.
No, I understand the concept. I mean, I don't have no problem with doing it. What I'm saying is that, why do we have to do it at this point when we have to go up on on the debt service? So we don't have to go up to 70.71, and we stay at 0.68, where we don't have a rollback, because otherwise, you're going into the rollback problem.
Well, remember,
We
we're
need
at
to stay
0.64.
within the 13 million so that,
0.64
We're at
tonight.
0.64 now, right?
Well, but this, we couldn't show all the pennies. Remember, this goes from 68 to 70, so we can go to 69, 69 and a half.
okay, but that's what I'm saying, we don't wanna go to that rollback thing.
No.
No, I don't
We
know.
wanna
This
stay
is, I
within.
guess, the worst case scenario.
Well, and Commissioner, the reason why we show that is because of the new legislation that was passed. Like, this is the time if you guys wanna consider that. Next year.
I understand, but I don't wanna
We won't
go
have
into
that
the
option.
rollback stuff,
Yeah.
I don't know about the rest of the commission, but.
Well,
personally,
and you know, you've been around, Commissioner, that's what these discussions are for. Tell you, look, this is what we think we need, and y'all tell us, no, we want this, and then if there's still a section we haven't discovered, or talked about yet, is y'all's wishes. What are y'all looking for in the community that we haven't covered? Y'all have another road needs to be punched out, a library, or whatever. Y'all need to tell us what your constituents are telling you.
The wish list, what the wish list costs.
Yeah, and that's why we're saying, this is what we have now. Now, if you wanna cut, saying we don't wanna do any roads and we wanna fund this, that's y'all's wishes, and y'all need to tell us.
I think the roads are Needed.
Let's do a dime.
Okay.
Good?
Yep.
Okay, so we're kind of running ahead of schedule.
All right, let's break.
Break.
Vámonos, breaks ustedes.
Another break?
We don't want to, you want to break till 11, and then we go to executive. Lunch will be here at 11:30, and then be done.
Lunch will be here, little,
That's fine.
We can eat after executive also.
Yeah.
Yeah, put it on. So want to go to executive now?
Yeah.
It's a bridge
That is
over
what it
here.
is.
Yeah, that's
Let's
fine.
go.
As long as
Go
it's-
with executive.
Let's do it.
Finish up?
Yeah.
So who's gonna read it? Volleyball?
But executive.
Oh, and that's, so, I'm sorry about the,
Okay.
part of the process was, I know, like Alex said, in past, all departments have pretty much presented. Is there any particular department y'all want to hear from before we go to? Want to bring them up, any questions on any particular department?
No.
All right.
I just want to make a comment that,
No, we're already going to executive session.
that on I know that we projected $300,000 less on the court. And that I do not want for us to be saying that we want to increase the court cost or the increase revenues in the court, because I don't want any more tickets. But chief, I mean, that's not the purpose of our police department. I think we reduce tickets. I think it's a good thing for public or residents, and so I think it's a good thing, even though it's a decrease,
Somebody please
but it's a
report
good
the ticket so we can approve it.
it's a good decrease on the revenues. I have no problem with that. So just to say that.
Okay. In accordance with sections 551.071 to 551.087 of the Texas Government Code, the Pharr Board of Commission hereby gives notice that is convening into executive session to discuss the items listed in the public portion of the meeting agenda. The time is now 10:36. 10:36.
Bridges, stick around. Other directors, stick around City Hall. Who's coming? Don't go to the fourth floor. Director offices, everybody phone engaged.